Once upon a time in the busy city of Abuja, there lived a man named Martin Cole. Everyone in the city knew his name because Martin was very wealthy. He had big hotels, estates, and many companies all over the world. But even though he had all the riches a man could want, Martin was not like many other rich men. He was different. He was known for his kind heart and compassion. He gave to the poor, supported orphans, and never turned away anyone who came to him for help. Yet with all the wealth and generosity, there was one treasure Martin valued above anything else. This was his family. He met his wife Naomi during a business trip away from home many years ago. From the very first time he saw her, Martin felt something warm in his heart. Naomi's beauty caught his eyes, but it was her kindness and her charm that captured his heart. Without waiting too long, he asked her to be his wife, and soon they became a family. Their marriage was blessed with two precious children, a bright little boy named Ethan and a sweet, gentle girl named Lily. Together with Naomi, they built a home that looked so perfect to everyone who saw it. Martin felt he had the perfect life, a beautiful woman who deeply loved him, and children who cared about him. But life has a way of changing when you least expect it. One evening, Martin was invited to a party. One of his top business partners was having a grand birthday party at one of the most beautiful hotels in the city, but he had no idea that the choice to attend that celebration would soon change everything. That evening, Martin dressed in his finest black suit. Laughter filled the air as people greeted one another with wide smiles at the party. He was led to a long table decorated with flowers. Around him sat his closest friends, fellow businessmen, and important investors. At first, the men laughed and joked. They talked about their work, their travels, and the things money could buy. But as the night grew deeper, their voices softened. The laughter faded, and soon the conversation turned serious. It was no longer about wealth and business, but about life itself. One of Martin's oldest friends, a man whose face carried many years of experience, leaned forward. His eyes were serious and his voice was heavy, like he was speaking from a place of pain. Success is a dangerous thing. When you are strong and rich, people will always gather around you. They will laugh with you, eat with you, and call you friend. But the moment anything happens to you, their true faces will appear. That is when you will know who truly loves you and who only stayed close to feed on your strength. That is why, my friends, it is wise to test the hearts of those around you before it is too late. The table grew quiet for a moment. No one spoke or laughed. Each man sat still, letting the words sink deep into his mind. Martin sat back in his chair. The words struck him like a stone dropping into calm water. His heart began to feel heavy, but he pushed the thought away. He told himself, no, my life is not like that. He looked around at his friends and said with a soft smile, not all people are the same. Not all women are unfaithful. My wife Naomi loves me more than anything in this world. My children Lily and Ethan would do anything for me. My relatives respect me. My business partners cherish me. My life is good and my family is true. On the outside, Martin laughed and brushed the words aside. But inside, in the quiet place of his heart, something had begun to grow. That night, after the party had ended, Martin returned to his great mansion. The house was quiet, but in his heart there was no peace. He lay on his bed beside his wife Naomi, but he could not sleep. The words of his friend would not leave him. Again and again they echoed inside him. People love you when you are strong. But the moment you are weak, that is when you see their true faces. Martin turned from side to side, but sleep did not come. As the days turned into weeks, those words began to echo in his heart. He found himself thinking about them when he was alone in his office, when he was driven through the city in his sport utility vehicle, and even in the quiet of the night while reading in his study. It was as if a shadow had settled in his heart, a shadow he could not chase away. Soon, questions began to rise in his mind, questions he had never dared to ask before. What if none of them truly love me for who I am? What if Naomi's smile fades when the wealth is gone? What if Lily and Ethan only honor me because of what my money provides? What if they're all just pretending? Martin tried to shake these thoughts away, but they stayed with him. The more he fought them, the stronger they became. He remembered how over the years he had watched powerful colleagues lose everything: wealth, influence, and health. And he had seen what followed, how they were betrayed by the very families they trusted most. The wives who once promised to love their husbands forever walked away when things got bad. Children who once called their fathers heroes started disrespecting them when they could not provide anymore. Relatives who once bowed with respect turned their backs without shame. Martin had worked for years to build his empire. He had risen from nothing to become one of the most respected billionaires in the land. Yet now, for the very first time, a cold fear wrapped itself around his heart. What if it all meant nothing? What if the love he believed in was not genuine? The fear grew day by day until Martin could no longer tell the difference between true love and love that only followed his fortune. But one fateful day, everything changed. It was a Sunday. He had just woken up after a short nap and made his way into the living room. But he stopped before he stepped in when he overheard his wife on a phone call with a friend. She sounded so vulnerable and sincere, and the words he heard her say broke his heart. "I was not born to suffer. If my husband is unable to satisfy me as a man anymore, I will walk away without thinking twice. Life is too short to suffer with anyone." Martin tried to tell himself she was just joking, that they were mere words. But the words kept eating at him by each passing day. After many sleepless nights, Martin made a choice. He could no longer carry the storm inside him alone. He needed to speak to someone he trusted. So one morning he drove to the office of Dr. Victor Hale, his closest friend, a man he had known for many years. Victor was more than a friend. He was like a brother, a man who had stood by Martin through good times and hard times. If there was anyone he could open his heart to, it was Victor. Inside the quiet office, Martin shared his pain. He told Victor about the phone call he overheard, the bitter words his wife said without remorse, and how the words of his friend at the birthday party had been on his mind since that night. After thinking for a while, Martin took a deep breath and said slowly, "I want to pretend to be blind. I want to see who truly loves me when they believe I have nothing to give. I will also pretend that my company is in debt and minimize the money I give to my family." Victor's eyes widened in shock. He sat up straight, staring at Martin as if he could not believe what he had just heard. "Martin, are you serious?" he asked with worry in his voice. "Why would you even think of such a thing? Your wife, Naomi, she loves you with her whole heart. Your children, Lily and Ethan, they adore you. I am sure of it. Why would you put them through such pain?" I am sure she was joking when she said those words during the call. You know women. But Martin insisted, "I need to be certain. I need to know their hearts, not only their words. What if everything I believe is only built on my riches? What if their love disappears when my strength is gone? I need to test them." Victor sat in silence for a while. He felt troubled. He could see the fear in Martin's face. He could see the doubt that had eaten deep into his heart. But Martin's mind was set, and there was nothing anyone could do to make him decide otherwise. At last, Victor placed a hand on Martin's shoulder. "If this is what you must do, then I will help you. But remember, whatever you find, you must be ready to face it." And so, in that quiet office, Victor and Martin made a secret vow. Martin would pretend to be blind for 3 months, and only the both of them would know the truth. From that day on, Martin's life began to change in quiet ways that no one else could see. He did not tell anyone. But every night, when the house grew silent and the family had gone to bed, Martin would sneak into his study and begin to practice a new life, the life of a man who could no longer see. But the hardest part was teaching his body how to stay still, to hide the truth that his eyes still worked. Night after night, Martin practiced. He trained again and again until his movements looked real, until he could almost believe the lie himself. Some weeks later, he told himself he was ready and decided to go ahead with the plan. They chose a quiet Sunday afternoon. The air was filled with the warm aroma of Naomi's cooking as she prepared lunch in the kitchen. Martin's heart pounded beneath his chest, both with anticipation and fear. But he had gone too far to turn back now. His friend, Dr. Victor, came to visit him just as they had arranged and planned. Martin slowly rose to his feet and began to walk toward the backyard. Then, just as rehearsed, he deliberately stumbled forward and fell to the ground. His body hit the ground with just enough force to look real, but not to cause any harm. "Martin!" Victor screamed sharply as he rushed to his side, trying to call Naomi's attention. From the kitchen, Naomi came running, filled with sudden worry, as she rushed out to see what had happened. "Martin, what happened? Are you all right?" She dropped to her knees beside her husband with fear written all over her face. "Are you hurt?" she asked quickly. Martin slowly tried to stand up, holding Naomi's hand, pretending as if his body was suddenly weak and fragile. Then, in a soft voice, he whispered the words he had prepared for weeks. "I don't understand what is happening. I can't see." Naomi looked at him in confusion. "What? What do you mean, Martin?" she asked in shock, waving her hand before his face, trying to confirm if truly he could not see. Before Martin could say more, their children, Lily and Ethan, ran in after hearing the commotion. Their eyes widened in fear as they saw their father leaning helplessly on their mother. "Father!" Lily cried. "Father, what happened?" Ethan shouted, rushing closer. The servants too began to gather. But in the middle of it all, Martin rested his head on his wife's shoulder. The act was so real and perfect that he almost believed it himself. Just as Martin had planned, his friend Victor rushed him to the family hospital. Everything unfolded exactly as he and Dr. Victor had prepared. Inside the hospital, Victor took care of everything. Martin lay still, pretending to be weak, while Victor quietly pulled the strings. He made sure every paper and test said the same thing. Martin Cole had lost his sight. At last, Victor stepped into the waiting room where Naomi sat with Lily and Ethan. His eyes looked heavy and his voice carried sorrow. "I am very sorry," he said gently. "Martin has suffered sudden and complete loss of sight. At this stage, nothing can be done to bring it back." The words cut like a knife. Tears streamed down Naomi's face uncontrollably as she held her children close. The hospital ward was filled with cries and whispers of confusion. But in the middle of it all, Martin lay quietly listening. His heart carried two weights. He was happy that his plan was perfectly unfolding, but also guilty that the pain he had caused his family was deeper than he had imagined. Martin spent 2 long nights in the hospital. He lay on the bed working from the hospital, but whenever anyone came to see him, he would lie down with his eyes closed, pretending to be blind and also in pain. On the 3rd day, he was discharged from the hospital. When he returned home, the mansion no longer felt the same. Naomi's eyes were red and swollen from endless tears. Martin was deeply touched. He almost decided to tell them the truth, but he held himself when he remembered the promise he made to his friend Victor. He must stick to the plan until 3 months were over no matter what happened. Martin depended on a cane to move around the house just as he had practiced for weeks, wearing dark eyeglasses that prevented others from seeing his eyes. Though the world believed him to be blind, Martin's eyes remained wide open in secret. And as he carefully and slowly walked around the house in pretense, he hoped that his wife and children would prove him wrong by remaining loving and compassionate. The next day, Martin called a meeting in his mansion. When everyone had gathered, he told them his company had suffered a major financial loss and they were barely struggling to stay afloat. He informed the servants he would have to cut their salary in half for a few months. Then he told his wife and children he would not be able to give them their monthly allowance until his company was doing well again. They would have to manage whatever money he could afford. Some of the servants quit their jobs immediately, forgetting the many times he paid them way above their salary and the numerous bonuses he often gave them. But a few servants remained. In the beginning, Naomi seemed like the picture of a perfect wife. She moved around Martin with gentle care. Her hands were always ready to guide him through the hallways. She would pull out his chair at the dining table, arrange his meals carefully on the plate, and spoon food onto it as though he were the most fragile man in the world. Her voice softened whenever she spoke to him, filled with concern, warm and sweet. "Honey, do not worry, my love," she would whisper as she touched his arm. "Things will get better soon." She smiled often in his presence, her eyes shining as though they carried love itself. To anyone watching, Naomi was the image of devotion, a wife who stood firmly by her husband in his darkest hour. But barely a week later, Naomi started to change. Her friends who were also married to wealthy husbands started feeding her mind with negative ideas. "Why are you wasting your life with a blind man that has lost his wealth?" some of them would say. "You are too young and beautiful to be a nanny to a poor blind man. There are handsome men out there that would do anything to have a woman like you." It did not take long before she fell for their deception. Martin's eyes, though hidden behind the mask of blindness, missed nothing. He listened. He observed. He noticed the small things that most would ignore. There were moments when Naomi's phone would buzz and she would glance at it with a suspicious smile. Sometimes late at night, when she thought Martin had drifted into sleep, she would turn away and start chatting with other lovers on the internet. She would smile and sometimes laugh out too loudly, then cover her mouth with her hands to prevent Martin from hearing. Martin began to notice things that did not feel right. He saw the way Naomi often laughed and smiled quietly at her phone while in his presence. He could see the way she started looking at him with disgust when no one else was present. At first, it was only little things. Then she started leaving the house without a clear reason, saying she was going to the market or to visit someone, but the hours would pass and she would not return. Martin tried to tell himself it was nothing. He wanted to believe that his wife was still the caring woman who once stood by him. But as days turned into weeks, he could no longer deny it. He began to see the picture clearly. She felt free, as if having a husband who could not see made her untouchable. She thought she could do anything without fear. Her little secrets grew bigger. Her small games turned into bold actions. She no longer cared to hide her smiles, her laughter, or her playful words with others. And just when Martin thought it could not get worse, the moment came that broke him completely. It was the kind of pain no man ever wishes to feel. One afternoon, Martin was sitting quietly on the couch in the living room. Then he heard the front door open. Naomi walked in, but she was not alone. A strange man entered with her. He watched as she pressed her fingers against the stranger's lips, telling him not to say a word. She walked straight to where Martin sat. She leaned close and placed a soft kiss on his cheek, pretending to be the loving wife, pretending that she cared. She thought Martin could not see. She thought he would never know. But then, right before his very eyes, the truth showed itself. Naomi turned away from him and threw herself into the arms of the stranger. She kissed the man on the lips with no shame, right there in the same house where they had promised to love each other forever. She held the man's hand and boldly led him into their bedroom, the room that was supposed to be the most sacred space of their marriage. Martin sat still. His heart was breaking piece by piece. It felt like someone had taken a sharp knife and pressed it into his soul. He could hear everything, the faint creak of the bed and the low whispers that carried the taste of betrayal. But he held himself. He was determined to keep the promise he made to his friend. As time passed, Naomi's love grew colder. She no longer pretended to care. She stopped speaking gently to him. She stopped greeting him. She stopped showing even the smallest kindness. She would walk past Martin as though he was nothing more than air. And sometimes when he tried talking to her, she would not answer, pretending as if she was not in the same room with him. She sold his cars and the few assets she could lay her hands on to fund her lavish lifestyle. Whenever Martin was alone, memories came rushing back. He remembered the sound of her laughter and the way she would rest her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat as if it was her favorite. But now those same memories burned. They were no longer treasures, but sharp reminders of trust broken and love lost. Among the children, Ethan always seemed the most gentle, charming, and the politest. At first, Martin believed in his son's love. When Martin spoke, the boy would smile warmly, as if his father's words truly mattered. To anyone watching, he looked like the picture of a devoted son, caring and attentive. But slowly, Martin could see the way he suddenly changed when he stopped getting the monthly allowance he used to receive. He realized that his son's kindness was not kindness at all. His gentle smiles were not born from love. Still, Martin did not speak. He did not reveal his heartbreak. He let the truth slowly reveal itself, because he knew that lies could not stay hidden forever. But in the middle of all this pain, there was one shining light, his daughter Lily. She was gentle and full of kindness. To Martin, she was not just a daughter. She was special, the one person who reminded him that true love still existed. Whenever Lily came home during school vacations, she would stay close to her father. She would sit beside him for hours, holding his hand as if she wanted him to know he was never alone. She would read to him and guide him gently through the rooms, making sure he never stumbled. Lily never asked her father for money. She never asked for gifts or special favors. She never pretended with false smiles. Her love was not tied to what she could gain. Her love was simple, pure, and unshakable. Instead, she started working part-time jobs and would bring her father gifts whenever she came visiting. When others in the house whispered for selfish reasons or acted only for themselves, Lily was different. She never joined them. Instead, she quietly stood by her father, shielding him with her care, making sure he always felt seen and always felt loved. And then there was Clara, one of the few maids who stayed. She was a single mother who had been abandoned by the man she loved and trusted. For many years, she had been almost invisible in the big mansion. She worked quietly, even when the other workers quit the job after Martin told them he would not be able to pay their salaries in full for a few months. During this season of Martin's life, Clara became something more. She became a quiet guardian of his heart. In the evenings, when the house was heavy with silence, Clara would sit with him and read aloud, bringing calm to his mind. When he needed to walk through the hallways, she guided him carefully, making sure his steps were safe, making sure he did not stumble. Her care was not loud or dramatic. It was hidden in small, simple acts. Martin often sat in surprise, filled with gratitude he could not always put into words. For in Clara, he saw something rare. She never flinched at his blindness, never questioned his silence, never tried to dig into his secrets. She did not care about his wealth, his power, or the great name that made others bow. She only cared about his well-being and doing her job the best she could. Through Clara's kindness, Martin learned that sometimes the greatest treasures come from the humblest places, and the deepest loyalty can be found in those who ask for nothing in return. Slowly, something began to change inside Martin's heart. He had not planned it. He had not even expected it. But as the days passed, he found himself drawn to Clara in ways he had never imagined. Her kindness was like warm sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. Every little act of care she showed melted his heart. And little by little, he realized something he could not deny. He was falling in love with her. It was not the sudden love he had felt for Naomi. This love was gentle, quiet, and steady. It was built on trust and care. In the simple moments they shared together with Lily, his daughter, Clara became one of the only people who made Martin feel truly seen. With them, he was not the rich man or the powerful father. He was just a man, still worthy of love and respect, despite the fact he acted blind and poor. And then, 3 months later, the moment came that would change everything forever. Martin was seated quietly on the couch inside the bedroom one fateful afternoon. Then the door opened and Naomi walked in with another man, laughing softly. She teased the man beside her, speaking quietly as though Martin did not exist at all. She truly believed her world was safe. She believed her husband was still blind, still helpless, still trapped in the darkness. She thought he could never escape. But then Martin rose slowly from the couch. He kept his walking cane aside and removed his glasses. With perfect balance, he walked to the door, opened it, and walked out. Naomi's laughter stopped at once. She stood frozen, her eyes wide, her heart pounding in shock. The man beside her stared too, his mouth open, his body stiff, not knowing whether to run or to stay. Naomi's face lost all color. Her knees weakened beneath her. She followed Martin almost without thought, into the living room where he went to. Her steps were slow. She no longer looked like the proud, fearless woman who had once believed she could deceive without consequence. Martin, however, did not even look at her. He did not raise his voice. He simply sat down on the couch in the living room, calm and composed, as if he had always known this moment would come. Quietly, he opened a book and began to read. The silence in the room was louder than thunder. Naomi stood frozen, her mind spinning in disbelief. Questions crashed inside her. How could he see? How long had he known? How much had he uncovered? Every secret she had built, every lie she had told, every cruel act she had carried out, all of it crumbled in that single moment of truth. Naomi went on her knees immediately in front of Martin. Tears streamed down her face as she held his feet, pretending to be remorseful. "Martin, please, please forgive me," she cried, her voice shaking like fragile glass. "I did not mean it. I was wrong. Please, I love you. I love you." But Martin remained calm and focused his gaze on the book he was reading. The man she had brought gently left the house without saying a word. Naomi wept harder, begging, her hands trembling as they held his feet. She searched his face for anger, for love, for anything she could use to pull him back. But all she found was a calm, unwavering smile, a smile that told her she had lost him forever. In that silence, Martin found his freedom. He no longer carried the chains of betrayal. He had discovered the loyalty of Clara, the purity of his daughter's love, and the strength of his own heart. And he was very glad he went through the pain to test their loyalty. As he turned the pages of his book, ignoring Naomi, who was already rolling on the ground in tears, Martin felt something he had not felt in years. He felt peace. The next morning, Martin called everyone in the family to come together. The big living room felt heavy and quiet. Naomi, who had always walked with pride and confidence, now stood small and unsure. Her hands would not stay still, and her face showed fear. On one side of the room stood Martin's son. On the other side stood his daughter. Clara, the young maid who had stayed by Martin's side through the test, stood near the wall. Her heart beat so fast she thought everyone in the room could hear it. Martin rose slowly to his feet, his voice calm but strong. "I have something to say to all of you," he began. "I have been watching. I have been listening. I have seen everything. You thought I was blind. You thought I had lost everything. You thought I could not see what was happening. But it was all a test. A test to know who truly loves me and who only loves what I own." The room fell into silence, so deep you could almost hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Naomi's lips opened as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came. Her face lost all its strength. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, guilt written clearly across his face. Clara's eyes grew wide as she waited to hear what would come next. Martin's eyes moved from one person to another, resting on each of them for a long, quiet moment. His voice softened, but the weight of his words was heavy. "I have seen lies. I have seen selfish hearts. I have seen betrayal. But I have also seen love, care, and loyalty. I now know who truly matters in my life." Then he turned slowly to face Naomi. His eyes, once filled with love for her, now held deep hurt. "You, the one I trusted most, the one I gave my heart to, you turned against me. Because of that, you can no longer stay in this house. You may go wherever you wish, but from today, you are no longer part of this family." Naomi went on her knees once again. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she cried out for forgiveness. Her voice shook as she begged, reaching her hands toward Martin. But Martin stood firm. His face did not change. His eyes told her that his decision was final. Then he turned to Ethan, his son. "My father gave me nothing. I built this wealth from my sweat. But just because I could not give you money for a month, you started selling off my expensive watches and started looking at me with disrespect. You can go with your mother." Finally, Martin turned to Clara, who had stayed quiet all along. His tone changed, soft now, warm and gentle. "And you," he said, looking straight into her eyes, "you never left me. When others turned away, you stayed close. When others thought only of themselves, you cared for me. You showed me what true love and loyalty look like." Clara's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of love and relief. In that moment, everyone in the room knew that Martin's words had changed everything forever. Then Martin turned to his daughter. Unlike her brother, she had not betrayed him. Through every moment of doubt, through whispers and lies, she had remained close to her father. Her eyes now filled with tears. She stepped forward slowly at first, then with certainty, and wrapped her arms around her father. Martin held her tightly. In that embrace, something stronger than any empire or riches grew between them. As he closed his eyes, Martin realized that no wealth could give him what he felt in that moment. Money could be stolen, power could fade, but the love of a child who truly cared for him was a treasure beyond measure. Naomi and Ethan were thrown out of the house with the little things they had left. And so, Martin began a brand new chapter in his life. This time, it was not built on money, riches, or power. It was built on something much stronger: trust, kindness, and love that came from the heart. With Clara by his side and his daughter always close to him, Martin discovered a joy deeper than any he had ever known before. Martin had learned something very important. He learned that money could show who people truly were. He learned that betrayal could hurt and leave wounds in the heart. But he also learned that real love, honest loyalty, and simple kindness were stronger than anything else. He tripled the salaries of the workers who stayed and willed half of his fortune to his daughter. As the days passed, Martin and Clara grew even closer. They spent long hours talking together. They shared stories, dreams, and even quiet moments where no words were needed. It was not long before Martin concluded that he wanted her in his life forever. One evening, with courage and gentleness, he told Clara the truth. "Clara," he said, "I have fallen in love with you." Clara's eyes widened. She was so surprised she could not speak at first, but deep inside she knew the truth. She had fallen in love with him too. The days she had spent by his side, helping him when he was blind, speaking with him in the quiet of the night, listening to his fears and sharing his hopes, all of it had planted seeds of love in her heart. Finally, Clara found her voice. With tears of joy in her eyes, she whispered softly, "I love you too." Martin smiled, his heart overflowing with happiness. He knew he could trust her words because she had already proven her love long before through her care, her loyalty, and her gentle heart during the hardest times. Some months later, the house was filled with celebration as Martin and Clara became husband and wife. Together, Martin, Clara, and their children lived in peace and happiness. The story of their home was no longer one of betrayal and sadness, but of love that survived every test. And in the end, they all lived happily ever after. Far away from the laughter in Martin's home, Naomi sat alone. Her son had been arrested for theft. Her daughter wanted nothing to do with her after hearing how she brought home different men in the presence of her father. Her heart was heavy and her eyes were full of tears. She thought about the choices she had made, and every memory cut deep inside her. She remembered the day her friends had told her, "You are too beautiful to stay with only one man. You should explore. You should find excitement elsewhere." At that time, their words sounded sweet like honey. She thought they cared for her. She thought they were guiding her to happiness. But now, sitting in silence, she knew those words were poison. The same friend who had advised her wrongly wanted nothing to do with her anymore. Because of listening to them, she had thrown away something priceless. She had lost Martin, a man who had loved her with a pure and honest heart. Now the house she once walked in proudly belonged to another. Naomi whispered to herself, her voice breaking, "I should never have listened. I should never have left the love that was real for a love that was fake." But it was too late. Her regret was deep, and nothing could change the truth. She had lost a man who truly loved her, and that loss would remain with her forever. Here are some lessons from this story. True love shows itself in actions, not words or wealth. The story teaches that real love is not based on money, gifts, or appearances. True care and affection are seen in how people act, especially during hard times. Bad friends can lead you to make bad choices. We must be careful who we listen to because not everyone gives advice that helps us. Which moment in this story touched your heart the most? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments below and stay tuned. Another deeply moving story is coming your way very soon. If this story inspired or moved you, do not forget to like it, share it with someone who needs to learn something from it, and subscribe with the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here and for watching till the end.